Okay, so can I bring it to order, please? Okay. Let's see.
I did change the agenda around. So
Yeah, I was
that
gonna
we
say they
could-
look different. Why do I have two different reports?
Because
here?
I just changed it so that we would do the audited financials first, so that. Jen
So which
doesn't
one's
have to-
right? I have two agendas and they're different. Which one's right? This one says approval and that one says review and approval. Which one's right? That one?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'd call this to order. Thank you everyone for attending. I'd like to go into the review and approval of the 2024 audited financial statements. Would Jim, Diana, or how do we proceed from that point?
Well, I'd like to introduce Jennifer Menard. She's
Okay.
with MMV and Company, and she's going to walk us through the financials.
Great.
All right, so I am not going to go through every line, every number. I think that you guys get pretty comprehensive information at your meetings. So we'll go over some highlights and some things that I thought were important to point out. And if you have any questions as we go, please don't hesitate to ask. So on page 1, we have the independent auditor's report. This and the other letter at the back of the financial statements are the only pieces of your financial statements that are ours as your auditing firm. The financial statements themselves are your financial statements. We assist management in preparing them, but they are in fact your financial statements. Management has to review and approve them. The opinion on the financial statements is an unmodified opinion again this year. That's the highest level of assurance as your auditors that we can provide to you. The responsibilities of management for the financial statements are to prepare fairly presented financial statements in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States. They are, again, management's financials. Management is also responsible for the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal control relevant to the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements so that they are free from material misstatement. On page 2, I'm sorry, this is the thicker, it's going to be the thicker packet.
Yep.
Okay.
This one.
So it starts with that draft, right?
Yeah, I think that you were looking at one of the.
There you go,
Yeah,
that's
there you
one.
go.
So we're on page 2 with that.
Our responsibility as your auditors is to provide reasonable but not absolute assurance. If we were to provide absolute assurance, we would still be here and Deanne would hate us because we would be looking at every single transaction.
Not at all, actually.
This also continues to list on what some of the things that we do in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards. If you go to page 3, you'll see that your accounts receivable increased about $100,000 this year over last year. That's really timing of payments coming in, and most of that is related to the Warren County contract. Your deferred membership dues down under the liabilities.
Hi, Laura, how are you?
Sorry,
I wasn't expecting you, actually.
I wasn't
Great
sure what
to
to
have
say.
you.
I brought my own.
We're on page 3 of the draft financials.
Thanks. Your deferred membership dues, that went up a little bit not a little bit, that went up about $50,000 this year, and that's really the timing of payments received. So that's when you are receiving membership dues for the following year. Those go into the deferred. And then your refundable advances went down about $25,000 this year, and that is related to those ARPA grant funds. So that just means that you were able to recognize more of that revenue this year. Going to skip ahead to page 5. Page 5 is your statement of functional expenses, and pages 5 and 6 are the same schedule but year over year, so they're comparative. So the most significant changes here was EDC events this year. That is partially accounted for in marketing because management felt that that was a more accurate depiction of what those funds are being spent for. And then your IT and telephone line went up pretty substantially this year, and that is related to that website redesign that you guys had to go through because of the vendor change.
Why wouldn't you have suggested that be capitalized?
Because it's not your software.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
All right, on page 7, the only thing I really want to highlight on here is this is your statement of cash flows. You did have a net decrease in cash and cash equivalents. And you can see that your net cash used by operating activities was about $82,000 this year. All of this is really a result of a couple of things. You've got expenses that are higher than revenue in the current year, and you also have a significant AR increase. And if you didn't have such a significant AR increase, this would look a little bit different. Going ahead to page 9. So financial statement note 1 is really all encompassing of what your significant accounting policies are and what the nature of the activities of your organization are. So this revenue recognition, if you're ever curious about how each piece of your revenue is recognized, but that's all detailed out in this footnote here. So it either follows the 958 guidance, which is really contributions, or it follows 606, which is more, your fee for service and things like that. So this kind of outlines what's recognized in which bucket. Page 12. This is a fairly substantial sized footnote. So last year, I don't know if you recall, we had to implement the lease standard. I think that was last year. It might have been 2 years ago. It was 2 years. They all blend together.
The pain remains.
Yes. So this really just talks about your leases. You have very few leases, which makes us happy because it makes our life a whole lot easier. So nothing super crazy here. No major changes in that footnote. Next page, under note 7, we've got the board designated net assets. So when you have board designated net assets, those are not donor restricted, those are just board designated. But you do have to disclose what those are designated for. So the only change here is that last year you had $30,000 that was designated for broadband. I believe that project was completed. And then, so you moved that $30 to unassigned, which is really undetermined and is kind of for future projects.
Essentially, it's unencumbered now.
You don't have encumbrances.
Well, I guess that's the wrong term. It no longer has any limitation on its expense.
Board designated doesn't really have limitation on it, on the expense, because the board can undesignate and redesignate and move designation. The only way that there would be a restriction on the expense is if it was a donor restriction,
Okay.
And then you wouldn't be able to change it. On page 14, note number 8 is your available resources and liquidity. You can see that your liquidity is actually a little bit stronger than it was last year. You have about $142,000 available to meet the needs of the organization. Again, you've got the board designated amounts that you could always undesignate if you needed to. Then we're going to go to page 17. This is the other report that we provide to you as your auditors. This is the report on internal control over financial reporting.
I should have 17. So 17 now. There we go. And math today.
What am I missing?
It's a small one like this.
It's a separate page.
Oh, okay,
It's, no,
Independent auditors
there
report
it
of
is.
internal control.
Okay.
So this is the report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance. So because you're a public authority, we actually have to look at certain compliance pieces to make sure that there's no problems there. We did not have any internal control related findings this year. So that's fantastic. That's always what you're striving for, is to have no findings. But it does go through and explain what the definitions of the deficiencies that we could come across are. But again, we didn't have any this year. Any questions on the financial statements themselves? All right. So the next we will do is going to be the letter that at the top starts with "We audited the financial statements."
So that was at the front of your packet.
This is a required communication with those charged with governance. So this is a letter that you'll always see that we send to the board. It explains what our relationship is in relation to the financial statement audit, which again is to form and express an opinion about whether the financial statements that have been prepared by management are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States. We are also we are required to plan and perform our audit to obtain reasonable rather than absolute assurance to make sure that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. So we look at the internal controls of the organization. We do test those. We look at them fairly in depth, but we don't opine on the internal controls themselves. It goes into the planned scope and timing of the audit, which kind of goes in conjunction with the engagement letter that came at the beginning of the audit. We have to comply with certain ethics requirements, and we are required to be independent of the organization in both appearance and actuality. Page 2, significant risks identified. This, I feel like, is everybody's favorite paragraph.
It was mine.
So professional auditing standards require that we identify risks. It is how we plan our audit. It is how we approach our audit. It's really the crux of the audit. Just because we identify a risk does not mean that we found a problem. It just means that it's an area of risk. The two that are applicable to your organization are applicable to 99.9% of my clients. So that is management override and improper revenue recognition. That does not mean that you've recognized something incorrectly. It does not mean that we found a problem with management doing things that they shouldn't be doing. It just means that those are risks and we plan our audit accordingly. Those are presumptively mandatory risks that we've identified, which means that unless we have a really, really good justifiable reason as the auditors, we have to identify those as risks. And if we don't identify those as risks, then we have to have a lot of documentation that supports that. So it doesn't mean that anything was wrong. Significant accounting estimates, every set of financial statements has them. You don't have any that are really all that crazy in yours. It might be some small things related to some of the deferred maybe, but there's really nothing that's substantial in your financial statements. On page 3, we just go on to continue on. There were no disagreements with management during the audit. There were discussions, but no disagreements and nothing that wasn't resolved. And then we do request written representations from management that as soon as I get back to the office, Deanne, I can send you that management rec letter and we can get this wrapped up.
Okay.
Any questions on that letter?
Thank you. No.
All right, and then the last piece that we're going to go over is the attestation engagement, which because you are, you didn't have that, okay, well, I'll just talk about it. Because you're a public authority and you have investments, you are required to do this extra investment statement, which is like this little baby one pager, yeah.
Yeah, okay, it is in there. It's the last one.
This one?
This one?
Yeah.
Independent account report.
Okay.
So you are required to have this little itty bitty one pager for your investments. And what we do is we look at that to make sure that it agrees to the investment statements and that all of the pieces that are required to be in that are there and correct. So really on this accountant's report, the only thing that really kind of stands out on here is that we, in our opinion, you did comply with all of the requirements of the public authority law related to the investments. It's section 2925 of the New York State Public Authorities Law. So there were no issues with that report. And that's really the gist of this one. Any questions on that? Or any other questions for me?
Are we your favorite client?
I'm not saying
Not on video.
All of my
Recognize she
clients are my
smiled.
favorite clients.
it. Whoever she's with is her favorite client.
Right.
Whoever pays for it.
I don't do the billing yet. That's still Chris's job.
So, obviously, we're just the committee.
Mhm.
Are you coming back to do the full board, or are we responsible?
I
for-
don't believe so.
I
I don't
didn't-
think
I didn't
that
ask
we've
her to,
presented to the full board. In the past, we typically go over it with
With us?
this group and then this group reports to the
We
full
will
board.
report to the board.
Yes.
So just one question on the kind of the adjustments on the last page. So there it is again here. So is there any suggestion that you and Diane have come together on in terms of I mean, some of these things are, late billing, blah, 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 but I do see your adjustment. Is there like amortization? Is that something that,
Which one is that? I'm sorry, I don't have that.
yeah, sorry. Oh,
That's,
So-
no, I didn't give her that. That was just
Okay.
me. But these are,
so these are when you did an
So-
adjustment. So,
This is related to the leases.
Mhm.
So that's something that you've contracted with us to assist with the
Okay.
booking of those entries.
that's why I was wondering what, it says your adjustment. So
Yeah.
that's something that's part of our program.
Yes.
That lease
Okay.
software is a nightmare to operate, so.
Okay.
Lease crunch isn't that bad.
Yeah.
Easy peasy, especially with you guys. It's one or
Well,
two
lease.
leases.
Well,
Yeah,
Yeah,
two
my
leases.
clients
You're
are
right,
6 or
it's
12.
here.
I have
And
some
they're
that
coming and
have
go with it.
I have some that have a voluminous number, and we will not offer to help them input their information. We make them do it.
And just one quick question on the current liabilities. What expenses under accrued expense? Oh, excuse me, I forget, I thought it was accrued payroll. Got it. Good. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if this, do we have a contract with you? How does this relationship work?
So 3 years ago, you went out for an RFP.
Mhm.
So we are at the end of that 3-year RFP. Deanne and I were actually talking about that this morning. So we are happy to continue as your auditors. If that's what you choose to do, you can go out for a new RFP. There is a statement in your policy that with an existing relationship, you don't necessarily have to go out for a new RFP. So that's really going to be something that's up to
If
management. and
If
the
we
board.
wanted to, we could suggest to you how we would like to proceed. Like, again, in my mind, I don't believe that there's a requirement that we go out to RFP.
Yeah, that was the question I was looking at you for. Do we have some bylaw requirement?
No.
Not existing.
And so
And in
my,
the policy
It's actually-
here,
way more cash conservative to continue with the.
Yeah.
so I guess the question that I wanted to ask you is mechanically, is that as simple as just indicating that we would like to continue the relationship and for a period, and then you would come back and tell us what the fee would be, or how mechanically would we continue?
yeah, so you would just let us know that, you either have gone out to bid, and if you do, please include us because we would respond to that. Or that you have chosen as an organization to just use that waiver piece in your policy and that you'd like to continue, and then yes, we would provide you the fee for next year.
Is it 1 year at a time under the existing agreement or?
It would be going forward. Once
And
we're
that-
out of that RFP
Okay.
period, then
Got it.
it would be each year. Our fees typically increase about 5% each year. And that,
Magic number.
yeah. That helps with
It used to
the,
be.
the cost of living adjustments
Of
and
course.
things that we have at our office as well.
I've noticed some accounting firms are no longer doing these audits, or in particular, audits that are for not-for-profit entities that
So
are.
then I would be in serious trouble because that is a lot of my year.
So that is not something your firm is talking about?
Absolutely not.
Okay,
No, we have a very strong presence in the not-for-profit and the government realm.
okay,
So that is literally my entire year.
okay. And do you keep track also of the changes that New York State imposes on us through the ABO and the Public Authority Accountability Act?
We keep track of some things, but a lot of those things are on you guys to know and understand.
Okay,
I would say that a lot of those issues don't necessarily have a major financial statement impact. And that's what we're more concerned about, is what has a financial statement impact.
okay.
But, last year when you guys magically had investments pop up on your balance sheet, we said, okay, but now you need this too. And that's where that separate examination came into play for the investment statement, is because we knew that that was required under public authority law.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions for anybody? Well, thank you very much. It was a wonderful
Absolutely.
presentation. We appreciate your hard work and assistance to our organization.
Thank you.
And do we excuse her at this point, or, okay? Thank you
Fabulous.
very much.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
You too. And Deanne, I'll send you over the,
How soon, because I'm leaving shortly and I want to take care of that before I go. Is that like
I
within the
don't have
next
that
2
on my
hours?
phone.
Within the next 2
It'll
hours?
be, yeah, I just have to drive to Latham. I'll do it as soon as I get to Latham.
Travel safe.
It is not on my phone though, so.
Enjoy the hockey.
Very
game.
nice to meet
I
you.
will, thank you. You also. Have a
Take
great
care.
day.
Thanks,
Yeah, thanks for everything, Jen.
With that presentation, does there need to be any more conversation about the contract, or is that just not?
Well, I
appropriate
think the only
place?
thing is whether you would want to act on this now or later. But I would suggest that we bring a resolution to the full board to act relatively quickly.
I think it's
I would get
reasonable.
locked in for next year
Yeah.
and make sure you're covered.
Yeah, because at that point, you
And
have to decide, the RFP will take a while, especially if things are changing.
So I'll have Trish draft the resolution for the regular meeting next week, where we would agree to extend for one more year, or at least propose to extend for one more year, because they won't give us their rates until we
Sure.
indicate that.
And, Dan, have you appreciated their, work? I know, and has there been any change through the merger of those firms that has impacted you in any way that you're?
She's
What
way
if
better.
she's-
I was gonna say, she's way more
Oh
knowledgeable
my
than
gosh,
the woman
she's-
that was on the screen.
she's very
She could
good.
speak and explain
We-
everything
She's
quite
pretty,
clearly.
I thought she was pretty good.
Yeah.
We used
She's very easy. to
Mitch
work
used
with.
to have problems, and I had problems with their former
Carl.
partner, Carl. And
He's no longer there.
right, but when I say problems, I mean like there was more back and forth.
Oh.
I think we have had the benefit of continuity over the last several years has essentially meant that any concerns have been dealt with effectively with them. And I think there is real value, because the amount of time that we spent in these audits a couple of years ago was dramatically more than we're spending now. So I appreciate the effectiveness of their awareness of the organization. She's generally here for a couple of days. We have,
Actually, just one this year. It's like we've got the whole process very streamlined. We
That's good.
organize all our material basically for the year. in-
That's why I was
in
wondering, it said,
anticipation of how
their
they-
name there, it's like, okay, so they're doing some of these calculations, which is great.
she's very efficient. Like, she comes in and talks to me independently. She finds her way to communicate with, key elements of the board very effectively. They know who she is, they take the calls. It just goes much better.
Now, they were gonna call me and they never did. And
They
I-
ended up talking to Dr. Duffy.
Okay, good. Absolutely. Great. So we just had a conversation that do we need a resolution here to pass it to the board?
No, I'll have Trish draft for the board.
For the board.
That we would propose and extending the agreement for another year.
Okay.
And,
Does it need to come as a recommendation from here, or it doesn't matter at all?
if anybody has any questions, they may ask you.
Okay. Excuse me then. I would then move for the approval of the January 14th meeting minutes.
Well, should we have a motion to approve the financials?
Yes, we should.
Okay. I thought there was a
We
resolution.
can, we can do it at the end, or we can do it.
Well,
Well, we're gonna approve the audit report and the financials.
okay, so review and approve the audited financials and the audit report. I guess I put that in there as well.
Yeah.
And so can I get a motion to review, to approve the 2024 audited financials and the audit report?
I'll make the motion.
Where's the commission?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. I'll move to the approval of the January 14th minutes. There was no quorum. I was not there.
I'll move to, I was there, I'll move to, approve the minutes from January 14th.
Second.
Okay, you can have this one.
Yeah, okay, is there any discussion? Please note, all in favor with an aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion does carry. Review and approval of the February 2025 financial statements, which Deanna has provided to us in the packet that we gave. We got.
A lot of paper. Yeah, so the fund balance is 1,050,000. Cash equivalent T-bills is just under 270,000 right now. So that is all right now. It's no longer T-bills. Everything is sitting in a money market fund. It's
Cash.
sitting in the same money market fund. So it's now exceeding the FDIC threshold. So
They're not sweeping that account?
we haven't been, no, so that's we can either sweep it or we can take some money and put it in another local bank that we haven't, it'd be nice to diversify across the different banks. So we have NBT, we have Arrow, and maybe Adirondack Trust would be the next bank to put
I would agree.
probably in a money market there as well.
If they're
since the T-bill-
members, then I would agree.
Oh, yeah, they used to be. They will be again.
They will, you're sure? When they, after.
Which one are you talking about?
Adirondack Trust.
What about Aaron?
Arrow is a
Yeah.
member, yeah, they're
on our
a
board.
top
And
member,
yeah, NBT,
member.
okay,
I would do Arrow.
that's what you have now, no?
Yeah.
Right
I
around
think
that,
this would
trust
be a good
rates are
opportunity
Are
to,
they? They
Yeah.
have been.
Okay.
I haven't looked in a while, but all our CDs got moved over there because they were like half a point high.
and it would be a good opportunity to re-engage with them, right, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll figure out how to split that up and, we made 820 on interest in both money markets. There's a Glens Falls, a small Aerobank one, and the NBT one. Cash is a little over 250.
There have been some changes over at Arrow, by the way, for the City of Glens Falls IDA, there's been a couple of issues lately. I think with the transition going on at Arrow, there was some change in some leadership positions, and you could always talk to Jeff or to Patrick Dowd, but they were having some difficulty this last week that they were talking to the board members about. So.
I'll talk to Pat about it. The accounts receivable, it looks a little high. Obviously, most of that is the town of Queensbury. Warren County, they're up to date. We received a check for whatever was left for 2024,
Wonderful.
and now the contract with them was just executed, so now we can collect on the 2025 invoices.
Wait,
With
with
who?
who?
With Warren County.
Okay.
Oh, I'm
Wait
sorry.
a minute,
That was
no,
What
Run
about
on.
that was a run on. Sorry.
Queensbury?
No. Warren County. We executed the contract
Okay,
with Warren County.
easier.
Yeah, Queensbury were all like.
So this is I would say since I've been here, it's the earliest we've ever had the contract executed. We changed the scope a little bit, but yeah.
Important to understand that the contracts changed primarily in response to the discussions we're having at Queensbury. Because Queensbury is using their scope as a benchmark against their investment. We were very careful to make sure that the scope that we're providing to the county demonstrates the things that we're uniquely doing for the county and for the city that we're uniquely doing for the city. We also made sure that proportionally they made sense in terms of the amounts that, the two were in line. That contract with Queensbury had stayed the same for 16 years. And so there was significant change in the way that the scope was represented to Queensbury, which then necessitated that every other contract pivot off of that for consistency's sake. I thought maybe that might lead either the county or the city to question it. I think they appreciated it. I had one discussion at each place, and they understood completely, and they had no change in the scope and no problem. So, but that just means that we continue to prepare the materials for an eventual meeting with Queensbury.
City of Glens Falls also.
Yeah, are we gonna meet with Queensbury?
Chris, I think, is working on that now.
Okay. I haven't heard anything, and she said she was gonna,
She's been out a
She-
week.
Yeah, she did set up a meeting. I think it's for next week.
oh, okay, so I'm not, she doesn't need me to go then.
I don't know. I haven't been part of that.
I just got a note, that's all.
Okay,
I'll remind her
okay.
when I do talk to her.
The payables is so being communications always invoices late in the next month. So I'm just going to put a placeholder. That's 2,500. I'll adjust it when I actually get the invoice. Do you follow? Like
You're
yeah.
estimating it.
Just so I have something. The DeLark was actually from 2024. We talked to the auditor. We're going to post it to this year, book it in this year, and that was for the staff.
So let me just explain what happened there. This is for the studies we did
Compensation.
on the compensations last year. They sent the invoice in proper time. I approved it and hit reply all, and I sent it back to DeLark. I did not send it to D. So I did not look at the list that I was replying to. And then they pointed it out after the new year had
3
come
months.
that they hadn't been paid for that. So this was my error. And so I apologize to them, and we'll get it resolved, and we'll talk to the auditor about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, are there any questions on the statement of financial position? Happy?
No,
So, moving to the statement of activities, honestly, we're tracking the budget pretty good. Our income more or less tracks. It's a little bit short on membership, but not much. Programming is a little bit under because of salaries. Overhead tracks. Yeah, board and development tracks.
On
So
the member contribution, I mean, if you looked at this just 1 month, it looks like a big percentage, but it's not a big number.
no, and if you go to the full, it's for the month, and I really,
Yeah, it's
I
just
do
a
my best to
timing issue, I'm
estimate when
assuming.
we think the money's going to come in. But if you look at the fiscal year, we're
Yeah.
pretty much tracking. And again, for the fiscal year, the difference is really mostly in salaries. We're a little bit under.
Which will probably continue as we go through the transition.
There's nothing meaningful in the receivables or paying for that we didn't go over already. I would just say the large report. I don't know if we still need all of these reports.
On a monthly basis?
Yes.
Yeah.
We do? So does the board need all of these reports? Like for the board meeting, so you guys go through all of this for the board meeting. What do you think about I just reduce it to the cover page, the statement of financial position and the fiscal year budget, the actual?
You're asking an accountant that. And I say that they should get everything because that's just me.
Well, we're approving that, so
Yeah.
they should see what we have approved.
Yeah.
We're just gonna represent it in the meeting that this committee has approved it, so they should have whatever we approved in case they want to question.
Our approval or anything. I don't think we should, cut it down for them. I know it's a lot of trees. I don't know if you can come up with a better way to copy it or
Well,
something.
Mike probably doesn't mind. So are there any questions on the financial? So I just put together this,
Did you guys see that the ABO made some policy changes?
it's the thing that just went out.
Yeah.
So I went through it with our
Okay.
lawyer. There's nothing new on it. They just are sharing their preferences for things, but there's nothing that we have to change in our processes.
Okay,
I'll show you the letter with my lawyer if you want to.
okay. I've got, we determined that the city needs to post our agendas earlier.
Yes, the 1
Actually,
week thing.
for us, it changes it the other way. We were doing everything 72 hours ahead.
Well, no, so the agendas, they're saying that there's
2 weeks ahead,
it's 1 week, actually.
no, 2.
No, just one.
We'll talk, I can show you what,
Okay,
I have a nice actually response and list that I went over with the lawyer. But so there was nothing found in our internal controls, but
Okay.
I just
Yeah,
thought this.
congratulations.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, we've worked with them. They've helped us.
I think you've done a nice job in that relationship and improving and getting more comfortable with how things are happening.
Yeah, thank you. But so again, there wasn't anything found, but I just thought that this might be a nice process to go through. It's just basically a list of all the items.
I thought
that
these
come up.
originally when I saw this, just like, what? These are all our problems?
No, no.
I was like,
No, they're
no.
basically just, it gives the committee the opportunity to go through one by one and make sure that we're on top of it.
Yeah. Up to date.
I want to go back to this discussion that we were having about the ABO. Whether it's 1 week or 2 weeks, it's still onerous.
It is.
It's onerous to have to put out agendas with the full package of materials that far in advance. And
it is.
And what is
Even-
likely to occur in most organizations is that they will reduce their agenda to a boilerplate.
That's exactly the conversation I had yesterday.
So I'm fighting that idea, but I don't know if we'll be able to fight it. I think that the public is better served by us putting our materials out on the timelines that we're currently putting them out and having it be complete, rather than putting it out earlier without
Draft.
the full material. And essentially what's going to happen then is people are going to stop making business at every single meeting. They're going to then propose, they're going to have to meet separately to figure out how to time when they are prepared to put out a package of materials. And then everything's going to wait. it just seems ridiculous. It's completely counter to the notion of efficient and transparent government. So,
And this is a state rule, right?
well,
Yes,
it's,
it's
when you
New
say it's a
York State.
rule, it's the ABO telling you what they're going to require. It's not legislation. It's regulation.
But it is the controller's office that runs the ABO.
Right.
So do we write a letter to them? Is it one organization or does that put a bullseye
I
in the
think,
back?
I think that definitely does, because that becomes a matter of public record that we're attempting to not follow it. I'm working with the team right now to figure out how would we meet the spirit of this by backing up the agenda that we put out and not dumbing it down. But if it is too far in advance, we will not be able to put the materials together with it.
So maybe before we go too far down this road, Bob Ryan with Hair Speech, and they just merged with someone else. But I am not aware of any, when I asked him about this week in advance, he said, I'm not aware of any legal requirement for the agenda to be 1 week in advance. I believe this is an expectation of the ABO.
Right. This is what is
This is what they
consistent
want.
in his
but
dialogue
it's
to
not
us.
necessarily-
It's guidance,
right.
and they say it in it, if you read the document.
So I'm telling you, and I will tell the full board, that I believe that we have made great strides in making our material more transparent and more available to the public than when I stepped into the organization. I don't want to take a step backwards. And so I'm going to propose that we try to follow as close as we can the spirit of what came out in this guidance, but not at the expense of providing thoroughness and detail.
Okay, the other thing here, again, guidance had to do with meeting minutes. And they asked that we post our meeting minutes 2 weeks after each meeting. And even if they are still draft and haven't been approved yet by the board, they think they should be posted 2 weeks after the meeting. That was,
We've been
the 2
posting
week.
them within a week.
Patricia's got us dialed up there. But
How do you
usually,
post when we haven't approved it?
Yeah, so that,
We post them
I,
with this draft is written on them.
and then,
You just-
And then we
and
switch
then when
them
they
out.
are approved, we pull the draft off.
Yeah.
that's really surprising.
Yeah.
We've been doing that already.
We hadn't been doing that.
Tricia usually produces the minutes for any given meeting on the same day.
Yeah.
And then we usually within a matter of 2 or 3 days, do whatever editing is required.
The only issue that I have, and the reason why the city follows whatever the ABO dictates, is because we've also been through audits by the ABO. And when they come in and you're not following their guidance, they will give you what they call an audit finding or a finding under their review. And then you go up on their board, which is statewide, showing that you didn't follow some guidance that they gave. And you become a target under that. And so that's why at the city level, and we just met with the city on this stuff yesterday and with our accountant, and we're just gonna follow their guidance whether
So-
we like it or not.
I asked Bob about this because in that guidance, it says that in the absence of minutes in that time frame, if you have the live stream available that can send in, you can't, like I asked, can we just not bother with this and just use the live stream? But you can't, but it is, it is still out there, the live stream, so that can compensate for your lateness on your minute.
Do you have a link on the site that click
We do,
connects to that?
we do now.
Yeah, so it does
Complicated.
it says in the guidance also that the website is supposed to live stream and you're supposed to like maintain 5 years worth of live recordings on your website.
5?
That's a data.
There's 5?
It's 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I
But
remember when they suggested that before, there was enormous pushback from municipalities over the cost.
well, so it says to the extent practicable, and the expense of maintaining this on the website can be used to justify that it's not practical. So we have a link to YouTube and all our videos, until YouTube starts charging us, but all our videos are available on our page on YouTube. And they're live streamed on YouTube.
But there was a discussion about us having to make sure that there was an independent record for up to 5 years that would not be, like if YouTube shut down their service, that we would have to maintain an independent copy. And for some of it was indefinite and some of it was for 5 years. And when that came out, we showed what an increase in our IT budget that would be. It would essentially quadruple the cost of our little tiny IT budget just to maintain the independent storage. And that sufficed is so far in terms of a case of reasonableness. So we continue with the practice of making it available through the commercial streams that are available and on our website to the extent that is practical with our infrastructure. That's the legal guidance we got.
And you're already doing this, but I recommend you continue to put the link to the live stream on your agenda, on all agendas.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
If there's no more discussion, I'd ask for a motion to do the February financials. Motion by Jim, a second. Any discussion? If not, please say aye in favor.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion is carried. Moving on to the review of the bank balances and thresholds.
So we've done everything, actually. That was just talking about diversifying our funds or holding us across banks. The
Okay.
review of the internal controls is done, the contracts, I did all of this in the financials.
The contracts update you did in the financials. You meeting with her? I thought
Well,
there's
no,
other
that I
contracts.
updated you on the status of our contract.
So the town of Queensbury, the
Oh,
county
pardon
and
me.
the city.
Got it.
The Warren County has been fully executed. The meeting has been held with the city. I haven't got a signed copy back from the mayor, but he had no problems when I met with him.
Partially executed.
Yeah, we're executing to it, but I expect that any day. Queensbury is the one remaining.
And the LDC contract will be approved at their annual meeting.
Is there any other business that needs to be brought before the board? Is there a need for an executive session? If not, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, the motion carries. I will say to you, March 19th is the next regular board meeting, and then April 8th is our next meeting.
So at our next board meeting next week, we'll try to make this schedule very narrow because it's also in conjunction with our annual meeting.
Mhm.
You know, goes on for a long period of time. So for instance, we're not going to do a deep dive on any particular industry segment, and we'll streamline any stuff that isn't approvals of documents. The one thing that is important though is, you know, Chris's,
Can I excuse you just one second? Are we?
Are we still recording or should I?
no, we've adjourned. the meeting.
Okay, that's fine. We did time.
Chris, you know, and